Okay, the next problem, problem B, is the history test with three different professors. So the independent variable is the class. It's and one, two, or three represents which professor. The dependent variable is the test grade, the score on the history test. So this is in the data view. If you switch over to the variable view, you should see class is our independent variable here, and test grade is the dependent. Notice I've set the decimals to 0 because they didn't come to us with any decimals. And remember on the values, I need to label what the 1, 2, and 3 stand for. Remember when you enter these, after each label that you apply, hit add, and it'll show up down here in this box. And when you've added the third one, then you're done and hit OK. If you try to hit OK before you've added all three, you won't fully label all the variables. Okay. All right, so the first question, B1, asks you to generate a frequency table for class and test grade, or I should say frequency tables, one for class and one for test grade. All right, so I'm going to come up to Analyze, Descriptive Statistics, Frequency, and I'm going to take both class and test grade and move them over to the variables. And then it's always a good habit to go ahead and ask for the central tendency statistics, the mean, median, and the mode, and then also the standard deviation. So we capture all that, or ask for all that, I should say. Then I hit OK, and here is my output. So you can see up above here we have both class is one variable and test grade is the other variable. Now you should look at this and know that some of these numbers don't really make any sense. So because class is a qualitative variable, we have 1s and 2s and 3s, but they're not really functioning as numbers. This information here doesn't mean anything. But for test grade, it makes sense to think about the mean, the median, and the mode of the test, and the standard deviation of the test. So that's all good stuff. All right, that's the statistics table. Then we have our two tables here that have to do with the class and the test grade, the frequency distribution of that. Remember, when you're looking at the any frequency table, these are just the scores, and then this is a count of how many times those show up. So 7 people had pudgy, 5 people had mudgy, and 7 people had kerpludgy. For test grade, these are the scores that people got on the test and how many times they occurred. So your question says, what percent of students were in Pudgy's class? Well, this is Pudgy. There were 7 students. The percentage would be 36.8. Don't ever worry about the valid percent for our class. That's something that has to do with whether or not you have missing data, and we're not going to worry about that. How many were in Mudgy's class? That's 26.3. Okay, and then the other final question there is, what percent of people overall scored at 70 or below? So I have to come down here, find my 70, and go over and get the cumulative percent, and I see that 52.6% scored at that 70 or below. So that is the information you need to answer B1. All right, moving on. B2 says graph the frequency distribution of test grade. So test grade is a quantitative variable. So I'm going to want to use something that's appropriate for a quantitative variable. My go-to is the histogram. So I'm going to go down to that, and then I'm going to take test grade and move it over here for the variable, and that's all I need to do. It'll give me a histogram. So I hit OK, and here is my histogram. And you can see that down here, as in any histogram, it's going to have the scores. And then this over here on the y-axis in a histogram is the frequency that those different scores occurred. And if you're curious, you can also figure out what the mean and the standard deviation are up there. All right, this is the information you need. Just resketch this by hand, labeling the two axes for B2. And then we're going to go to B3, do an error bar graph. So for that, I'm going to go up to Graph, Legacy, Error. Whoops, let me move this over a little bit because I don't think you're seeing that. graph, legacy, error. And in this case, you want to be grouped into cases by class. So I'm going to hit define and leave it on that summaries. And so in essence, what we're doing is treating class as our independent variable, our category variable, and test grade is the variable that we want to actually plot. So I move those in there, hit OK, and here I have my nice error bar graph. So I have the three different professors, Pudgy, Mudgy, and Kerpludgy, and the circle shows the mean, the average test score over here. Whoops, I just realized I made a mistake. So I'm going to show you how easy it is to fix it. So this is a confidence interval. I don't think I set it for standard deviation. Let's go back and check. So go analyze, graph, legacy, error bar, that's right. Yep, I didn't change that. I wanted to change it to standard deviation and plus or minus 1. Psych. Okay, ends up looking pretty similar, doesn't it? Okay, so Pudgy, Mudgy, Kerpludgy. Now I have the mean plus or minus 1 standard deviation of test grade. So it's a good idea to make sure the graph is giving you what you want. So you're just copying this graph for B3. All right, and then moving on, calculate the B4 says calculate the overall mean, median, mode for test grade. We already did this. Remember up here when we did our frequency table, we asked for the statistics table to start with. So it's looking at test grade, and we want to know what the mean, median, mode is for that. I didn't ask for standard deviation, but it's right there if you want it. But you can report those for B4. Okay, B5 says now use compare means to compare the three classes, report the mean and standard deviation. So I'm going to go up to analyze. I'm going to go down to compare means and over to means. And now I'm going to treat class as my independent variable and test grade as my dependent. And I'm going to hit OK. And now you should see I got down here the three different classes, Pudgy, Mudgy, and Kerpludgy, and I got the means for those three and the standard deviations for those three. So we can use this information also for question 6, B6, which class did the best overall? And that would be, I'm looking at the test grades here, it looks like Kerpludgy did the best overall with the mean equal to 77.14. And then which class had the higher variability? That would be the same one. Kerpludgy had a standard deviation of 17.043. All right, I think that polishes off question B, or problem B.